that the leaders in the European Union don't actually understand business at all. It's starting to be kind of frustrating, actually, to, to read about some of the practices which are carried out in the European Union. You see, as it is now, the European Union is actually kind of it's kind of a monolithic entity in the EU. I mean, the EU government is kind of a monolithic entity which oversees a lot of different businesses. And annoyingly enough, for us Americans, the European Union also files suit against American companies, and a lot of major movie studios have been some of those companies. And also, unfortunately, Apple and Microsoft and Google especially have seen some trouble from the European Union. So all these things combined definitely don't lead to a very fun experience for any American businessmen. Now, as it is now, the European Union is going after Mickey Mouse, apparently, in quite a few different and, although related, lawsuits against American movie studios in this latest antitrust charge. Sky UK, Disney, NBC, Paramount, Sony, Fox, and Warner Brothers are several of the studios which have been named. The European Union has now filed antitrust charges against Sky UK and 6 major U.S. film studios, accusing those companies of unfairly restricting customers' access to content within the European Union. The European consumers want to watch the pay TV channels of their choice, regardless of where they live or travel in the EU, says competition chief Margrethe Vestager in a press statement, saying, "Our investigation shows that they cannot do this today because of licensing agreements. We believe that this may be in breach of EU competition rules." So a business cannot make an agreement with another business due to European Union competition rules? That doesn't sound very free market at all. But then again, the European Union has, I don't think, ever touted itself as being very pro-free market, unfortunately for us business people. So if you look at it now, you can sort of, if you stand back and watch what's going on, you can sort of see that the European Union seems to have a bit of a bias against, well, just businesses in general, but particularly large businesses. Now, why is that? Well, the European Union is made up of a lot of different countries, and the representatives for the EU come from a lot of different countries which used to be communist nations, former Soviet satellite states and what have you. Of course, Germany was at one time split into 2 separate nations, one half of which was rather communist, being under Soviet rule. So it's no surprise that we're seeing a little bit of socialist ideals sort of leaking into European Union policy. It's really not surprising at all to see this seeping through. Now, that's not to say that if you have come from a communist country, then by all means you're communist. No, it doesn't really work that way. But if you're a politician and had been pre-1991, which I'm sure a lot of them have been, then you're going to see some of that influence leaking through in your policy. So the studios named in the European Union Commission's statement of objections are Disney, NBC Universal, Paramount Pictures, Sony, 20th Century Fox, and Warner Brothers. The Commission says that when Sky UK, which is a British pay TV company, licenses films from these studios, it's required to geo-block access to the content outside of Ireland and the UK, which restricts European citizens' access. Clauses within some of these agreements also stop other broadcasters from licensing the same content in the same countries, further stifling competition, according to the European Union. But then again, it's not since when is it the European Union's job to ensure that competition is upheld? I don't actually know when that policy has been enacted. I'm sure possibly there is some policy in the European Union that requires the European Union to step in whenever they see something that's not quite fit. But that's such a foreign idea to us here in the States, where we're used to businesses competing with each other on, I don't know if even ground is the right word, but on a common idea or a common understanding that the government is probably not going to jump in and determine what businesses can do. Unfortunately, we're seeing that here, where we're seeing businesses being told what they can and can't do by the European Union. So the Commission's preliminary conclusion is that these clauses would constitute a serious violation of EU rules that prohibit anti-competitive agreement. So the European Union has said in a press release, the statement of objections is the first step in a full antitrust suit, but will require a response from the company's name before it continues. The Commission also said that it was investigating similar charges against other major European broadcasters, including Canal Plus, I should say, of France, Sky Italia of Italy, of course, and Sky Deutschland of Germany. The antitrust charges themselves are part of the European Union's wider digital single market strategy, which seeks to boost Europe's digital economy by making it easier for companies to operate across borders. In the case of digital content like movies and music, this means making sure consumers or customers can access the services that they pay for, regardless of licensing agreements within specific countries. The studios and Sky UK now have the chance to respond to our concerns, says Vestager. And it makes you realize how nice we have it here in the States. You know, we complain a lot about our conditions, right? I mean, we actually do kind of complain a lot about our conditions, especially if you post on Facebook. You've probably posted something negative about how things are and how things have become recently. That's something that we like to do, actually. Is we would like to post on Facebook, like, you know, when I was a kid, things were so much different and thus better, and here's why, you know, and some infographic showing a picture of what kids do today and what kids did yesterday and how terrible it is and yada yada, when in actuality it's just the same thing, just manifesting itself in a different way. But anyway, it's frustrating to see people so negative, I guess, about different conditions that we have here in the States. When you think about it, we actually have it pretty dang good, all things considered. We don't have to deal with ridiculous geo-blocking a lot of the time, and if we do, there's a way to get around it. We don't have to deal with not having access to Netflix. We don't have to deal with not having access to all sorts of different businesses and services and things which are necessary and all these sorts of things. We don't really have to deal with lack of access to much of anything except drugs, but we don't have to deal with lack of access to much of anything at all. So who are we really to complain about conditions when a lot of our conditions are actually pretty good when it comes right down to it? It shows you how the European Union is kind of not that great when it comes right down to it. It's kind of, well, it's unreliable for one, economically, and it's not looking so great for the future. Things in the European Union are not looking very good at all long term. So we actually have it quite good here in the States. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't point out any wrongdoings, because we definitely should, but it's worth keeping in mind that we actually have a pretty good situation thing. We got a pretty good thing going here in the States for now. I mean, yeah, there are complaints to be made. You know, there are complaints to be made about like how it's not so great with the economic situation that we have here in the States, where eventually everything's going to collapse and it's all going to be a big calamity and everything's going to be terrible. Yeah, that's pretty much true. But we have a system in place where we have local economies and we have local infrastructure that can take care of us during these times, and we can take care of each other during these times. And these sorts of infrastructures perhaps are not really being manifested in other places quite so much. So we actually have it quite good here. And it's something that has to be kept in mind, because we always like to be so negative about, well, everything. You know, we like to be negative about pretty much everything ever. So it's worth keeping in mind that we're actually not doing so bad in a lot of ways. It's optimism is something that is very important for a healthy economy. Even a healthy local economy, optimism is extremely important. So it's worth keeping a positive attitude when we're talking about the economic situations. Like, we'll talk about the same situation, but one person will have one viewpoint and another person will have another. For me, it's economic collapse, which I don't see as a bad thing. And there'll be something like we'll see something along the lines of there's going to be an economic collapse in 10 years, and I don't see that as a bad thing, but somebody else will, and they'll say that this is going to be the worst thing ever, and nobody's going to have food, and there's going to be looting, and there's going to be rioting, and there's going to be lawlessness, and there's going to be yada yada. But actually, I don't really see that as being a very realistic scenario. Let's put it in these terms. If suddenly no police existed, would you go and commit a crime? Well, no, you probably wouldn't. Now, some people probably would, but you probably wouldn't. And in fact, most people probably wouldn't. Now, if there were no economic controls at all from the government, would you suddenly be a cheat and a liar? Well, probably not. And a lot of people probably wouldn't be. In fact, even if you were, there'd be somebody to call you out. So if there was no economic help from the government, would the economy suddenly collapse? Well, actually, probably. The national economy most likely would, seeing as the DoD pumps a ton of money into the economy, and so do all sorts of different agencies that we have. Economic agencies keep dumping tons of money into the economy, and it's not really paving the way for any sort of future that's going to be very positive at all when you think about it. Now, think about it this way. General Motors is still around. Okay, why? Well, General Motors technically should have collapsed sometime around 2008, but it got a federal bailout. Well, what if it didn't? What if there was no General Motors today? What if nobody cared about GM, nobody liked Chevy, and nobody wanted any of these vehicles? Well, if GM, say, got liquidated, chances are the different brands which are under the GM umbrella would be bought out by other companies. So you'd see Toyota, as an example, buying Chevy, and then they would open up different facilities and different plants and hire different people. And in a lot of ways, there wouldn't be much change. And in fact, there might actually be growth. But also, you'd see competition coming from smaller automakers, from venture capital, and you'd see different firms merging, and you'd see an American entrepreneur starting up a car business, and you'd see all sorts of different changes. Now, that's not going to happen now because things have changed, because there's been a economic intervention on the side of the government propping up GM, which is, again, not a free market move. Now, had there been a free market move there, we might see all sorts of different scenarios going on today that we can't even possibly imagine, because they're so different from what we have today. But unfortunately, GM still exists thanks to the government, and I don't drive a GM car. Well, actually, I do. Never mind. I do drive a GM car. I drive a Buick. I wouldn't drive a GM car if I had a choice of buying a new car. I'll put it this way. I probably actually wouldn't even really buy an American car because I don't like how they look and I don't like how they're built. So go figure. Not that I'm anti-American, really, when it comes down to cars. I'm not really anti-American in a lot of ways. It's just that I don't like this particular product, so why would I buy something that I don't like just to support some cause? I don't really think that way. Even so, I could buy a VW car, not that I would, but I could, and it would still support even our more local economy here with the VW plan. So that would actually be technically the most local economy car purchase that I could make, other than the Elio, which is coming out quite soon next year. And the Elio is an interesting vehicle, actually. I was reading about the Elio not too long ago. It purports to get 80-something miles to the gallon. It's a three-wheeled vehicle. It can get 0 to 60 in 9-something seconds, and it's really just an interesting car. It's built to be as inexpensive as possible. Now, note I say inexpensive and not cheap, because the thing doesn't look to be cheaply built. It just looks to be inexpensively built. They've not really cut corners. They've just made really creative design decisions that cut costs. And again, it doesn't look to be a poorly built machine at all. It actually looks to be rather high quality. It's just that it's not a top dollar vehicle. It's supposed to cost $6,000 odd, a little over $6,000, I should say, depending on what options you get. So a $6,000 car, or a little over a $6,000 car, even so, under a $10,000 car, is a really nice deal, especially if the thing actually operates at all. If the thing drives, and if it truly does get 80-something miles to the gallon, who am I to complain, really? So I'm pretty excited to see the Elio, and you can actually get one. I think it's like a down payment of $100 or $200. It's not very expensive at all for a down payment on one of these things. So it's an option that I'm looking at that's really interesting. And again, it's an American company. American entrepreneurs are developing this vehicle, and it's coming out next year. And it's made it's made here in the States. In Louisiana, they have a plan. There are going to be dealerships around the country. But you don't really hear about that because it's not a big business. It's not going to be changing the way we think about things on day one. It's not going to be a business like that, but it's going to be an interesting venture anyway. It would be interesting to purchase one of them, and actually, it's designed so that you can repair it yourself too, because you can buy parts and stuff online. So it's really cool. Now, no, I'm not being paid by Elio to say anything like that. I'm just noting it because it's actually kind of cool. I'm not paid by anybody, so I don't have any obligations when it comes to talking about products. I have no obligations whatsoever. I can talk as negatively or as positively about any product that I want, and nobody's going to tell me to do otherwise. So it's actually kind of nice. Now, Donald Trump has been making some waves, unfortunately. Donald Trump has been making some waves across the political spectrum, on both parties, because the Democratic Party is starting to notice Donald Trump, I should say, as being kind of a crazy person, and Republicans are noticing Donald Trump because I guess Republicans are crazy too, but someone just deleted Donald Trump's entire Wikipedia page. So it turns out that the Donald, as The Verge puts it, is behind the disappearance of his own Wikipedia page. It would not be the first time that a political candidate has tried to tinker with his own identity on the internet's encyclopedia, but it may well be the first time that somebody has decided that edits are for cowards and just erase the entire thing in one stroke. Traces of his Trumpness can still be found across Wikipedia's non-English language sites because we can only assume that Donald Trump does not speak Spanish. What has become of the crowdsourced biography of our nation's most valuable windbag billionaire? Does the answer lie inside that magnificent hairpiece, or perhaps in the abandoned bunker where Trump's been storing his discretion? We don't actually know, although it is back now. But for some reason, Donald Trump apparently deleted his Wikipedia page and then resurrected it again. So why? Well, people have been doing comparisons between the old article and the new article, and we're going to be bringing you what changes have been made so far as it is now. I was reading this really, really funny thing that a friend of mine sent me about Donald Trump, actually. And I'm no fan of any political candidate. Let's just throw that out there. I don't like any of them. So I despise Lindsey Graham. I really can't stand John McCain. I think Jeb Bush is a joke. I think Hillary Clinton is a poor choice. I think Bernie Sanders is a socialist, and I don't like him for that. He seems like a cool guy personally, but he's a socialist. I don't like any candidate at all on any spectrum, period. I would not vote for anyone for president because I don't even like the idea of the office of president. So why would I put someone in a position which I don't agree with its own existence? So that being the case, I'm really interested to see the developments with Donald Trump. That having been said, I don't like any of them, but I think it'd be really funny if Donald Trump won anyway, just because it'd be funny, right? I mean, like, I don't like the guy. I don't like his politics. But I think it would be funny if he won, just because it would be funny. Like, you can't deny it'd be pretty funny if Donald Trump won. I'd be morbidly curious to see what would happen if he actually did win the nomination and then the seat in the White House. People have posted pictures of Biff Tannen, his Las Vegas, or rather, I guess it was Twin Valley or Pine Valley or whatever it is from Back to the Future. His gambling house there. It sort of reminds you of that, Biff Tannen, Donald Trump, but. Somebody posted this story, I think it was on Reddit, and it was this guy who was positing that Donald Trump is actually a performance artist. I can't think of words today. Donald Trump is actually a performance artist, and he's been joking the whole time, and he's trying to get people to realize that he was joking. So he gets more and more outrageous as time goes by, coming up with just ridiculous things, trying to convince people that he's joking without outright telling them, and it just isn't working because American politics are so messed up that he can do pretty much the most outrageous thing ever, and nobody will call you out for joking. And it's really funny because even Donald Trump came out with a statement saying you just want to see how far this goes, don't you? I mean, that's half of what it is, because I actually do kind of want to know how far it goes. I'm morbidly curious, again, to see just how far Donald Trump's campaign is going to go, because now that I want him to win, although I do think it would be really funny, I just think that it would be interesting to see just how far Donald Trump can take it. And again, I'm not a fan. I am not a fan of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. I think neither party is very good for America. I think both parties are actually detrimental to America, especially the Republican Party, because people are duped into voting for them who are otherwise very well-meaning people. Well, anyway, with $20 million in the bank, JetSmarter is building the Uber of the skies. And we're noticing that that sort of moniker, the Uber of this or that, the Uber for this or that. We've seen Uber for medicine. We've seen Uber for money. Now we're seeing Uber for the skies. Well, it's 12:24 here at Hot News Talk Radio. I'm Russell. Here's what's happening. It's a very gloomy day here in the Chattanooga area, unfortunately. Temperatures are looking to be in the mid-80s, and we're expecting some rain today as well. In fact, just looking out the window, I can tell you, it's looking pretty dang gloomy. Expecting rain any second now, actually, just because it is prescribed for us from the man upstairs. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio is everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. 85 degrees right now here in the Chattanooga area. Thunderstorms are expected. Tomorrow, 88 degrees, partly sunny. Saturday, 88 degrees, mostly sunny. And Sunday, 88 degrees, mostly sunny. So today we're expecting some thunderstorms tonight, thunderstorms as well. We might be seeing a little bit of a smattering of rain on Friday, but I'm not really expecting much of anything like that. But the weekend is looking actually kind of nice. So not a bad weekend for us here at the Hot News Talk Radio studios here in Chattanooga. And I'm expecting some rain today. So keep that in mind if you're going to be traveling at all today. We are expecting a little bit of rain, but nothing too bad. Hopefully, we're not going to be seeing any flood warnings or anything like that. JetSmarter, a private air transportation startup, is wanting to make the commuting by private jet an actual reality for anyone. So $20 million in Series B funding from the Saudi royal family, music and entertainment moguls, including Jay-Z, and executives at companies like Goldman Sachs and Twitter. The company will make a big step closer to that goal of realizing Uber for the skies for anyone. Originally launched in 2013 as a booking platform to serve the niche market of wealthy jet setters, JetSmarter aggregates prices and availability from over 800 private flight providers across the country. Using the app, travelers can then select from over 3,000 airplanes that range from propeller planes to Boeing business jets, and they can book a flight to nearly any city. That's the traditional niche market, the charter customer who pays to create itineraries for themselves, says the founder. We're going to talk more about that just in a few seconds here at Hot News Talk Radio. This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and this is Digital Drive broadcasting to you live right here from Chattanooga, AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, and hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of the
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
You feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducts. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. Secretary of State John Kerry defending the nuclear deal with Iran before Senate committee, saying the alternative
isn't a, quote, better deal, some sort of unicorn arrangement involving Iran's complete capitulation. That is a fantasy. Plain and simple.
Ahead of testimony, Republicans airing their skepticism.
Right now, we have some leverage. But 9 months from now, the leverage shifts to them because we have a sanctions snap back.
Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Senator Bob Corker telling Kerry he'd been fleeced in the agreement. The attorney who represented the Boston Marathon bombers been assigned to the case of the suspected South Carolina church shooter, and a fire devastates a commercial area in historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia early today. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Uber 4 is becoming a prefix rather swiftly in the business world. Uber 4, what does it mean? Well, Uber-FOR, Uber 4. Well, what it means is it's essentially just that. Now, Uber, if you're not familiar, is a service which, and that's okay. Everybody's, it's all right. Uber is a ride-sharing platform. That's what it likes to describe itself as, although some would contest that and say that it's actually a taxi service. I would contest that and say that it's in a class in and of itself, and really it's not anyone's business what it is anyway, because the government should have nothing to say about business. But anyway, Uber is a ride-sharing platform. That's what it describes itself as, thus that is what it is. Now, Uber is an interesting specimen, mainly because I should say, it's really just, it's beyond explanation in a lot of ways. Uber is beyond explanation in a lot of ways because there's no reason that it should be there, really. I mean, it's like, I don't know where it came from. It just sort of popped up and everybody was crazy about it, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's crazy. And what happens with Uber is you rent out your car. Basically, you contract out yourself where people can share rides with you. Well, let's say I'm downtown and you want to drive from here to there. You put that destination in your phone, and I give you my location, and then it shows me on a list of available people, and then you can pick me as a driver, and I will drive you to your location. It's quite simple, actually. So that being the case, it's not that hard to use Uber, actually. It's not hard at all. So that being the case, it's kind of popular. It's really popular, actually, and it's overtaking traditional taxi services. Now, that makes taxi people kind of upset, understandably, I suppose, but still, it makes taxi people rather upset. Now, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy, I guess, for that, mainly because taxi companies should be able to compete. I mean, if you can't compete, then come on. You're a taxi company, but you can't compete. I mean, come on. See, there is a solution there, which is to simply offer up a app for the smartphone and use that. Like, there are options there to compete with Uber. However, if Uber ends up being the proper and better platform, then by all means, taxi companies should fail. You see, that's something that is not understood, I think, by a lot of not economists so much, but a lot of politicians don't understand that if a business is not the best business, then really it shouldn't survive. If a business is not the best business, it's being quickly overtaken by competition, then the business that's failing should not survive and shouldn't be propped up by any government. Now, if that business can pull itself together and find some clever way to bring itself back, then by all means, kind of like Apple. Although Apple, to be fair, did get kind of a bailout from Microsoft. But again, there wasn't really a whole lot of government involved in that transaction. Although Microsoft has certainly been hindered by the government in the past, not so much Apple. So it's not like it's not like we're seeing with taxi companies, where taxi companies are really struggling and perhaps they should fail. Taxi companies perhaps are on the out and out simply because taxi companies are inferior. Could that be the case, that Uber is the better solution than the taxi company is? Actually, that's kind of likely. So if taxi companies can't compete and taxi companies are being held back, then that's just business. Now, there is something else that needs to be pointed out, is that perhaps the taxi companies can't compete because of government intervention. Now, that's a whole nother animal. That's not Uber's fault, of course, but it's something that needs to be pointed out, is that the government should have nothing to say about business. That includes taxi businesses. I'm not anti-taxi businesses at all, actually. If there's a solution for taxi companies to become better than Uber, then by all means. But if there's not, then it should fail. I'm not really pro or anti any business. I just want businesses to move as businesses will, without any intervention other than the intervention of the consumer. That's all I want. You see, so when people talk about free marketers like myself, like David Toulis on Newonomics.com, they like to paint us as very heartless people. They like to paint us as people who are just anti-business in general in a lot of ways, in the sense that we are anti the government helping businesses, and that we're very heartless people who hate small people, and we really cater to big business, and we like big corporations, and we chill out with our buddies at Goldman Sachs. And that's really not how it is, because I don't like banks. I actually really hate banks, believe it or not. Banks are only there to serve their giant corporate government masters, so I'm not a really big fan of banks. Banksters are definitely not my favorite people, but like our dear Lord and the Pharisees, I shall hang out with them anyway, because that's what I've been called to do. But anyway, no, I'm not anti any business, and that's something that needs to be understood by people who are anti-free marketers and say that we don't like certain businesses, we're biased towards certain businesses. No, not really. I mean, there are businesses that I will cater to, or businesses that I will not cater to, but I will patronize over others simply because of personal preference. But I'm not anti any business. If there's a taxi company that is better than Uber, then certainly that taxi company should survive if it can market itself properly. That's just how it is. But if it can't, then it can. If it can't hire PR campaigns, then that's just how it is. And that's just business. Again, that business then should fail. I'm not anti any business. I just don't want intervention in the marketplace. I don't want it because it seems kind of unnecessary in a lot of ways. It's extremely unnecessary, actually. There are a lot of different things, too, that cause a business to fail. Maybe geography is a problem. Maybe you are in the wrong demographic. I mean, think about it this way. What if MTV, music television, picked the wrong time slot to be on, and it was on during school hours in the middle of the school year? Well, then MTV probably wouldn't have taken off the same way it did. But the guys over at MTV were smart, and they marketed it properly. But had that not happened, MTV very well could have failed and not become the cultural phenomenon that it was in the 80s. You see, there are a lot of different factors at play when we're talking about business. Uber could very well have a stupid name, and it could it could have lower rates or higher rates or something that causes it to be unpopular, and then it would fail. And there are a lot of different factors at play with businesses. Business is a very complex thing. Trust me, I know. So the traditional niche market is Uber for something. That's what Uber for generally means. Is it's a ride-sharing service or something along those lines that delivers something to you, or another person does it for you on a contract basis, not from a monolithic company. That's Uber for. Well, Uber for flight is now swiftly becoming a thing. So with $20 million in the bank, according to TechCrunch, JetSmarter is building the Uber of the skies. JetSmarter is a private air transportation startup, and it wants to make commuting by private jet a reality for all travelers, I should say. With $20 million in Series B funding from the Saudi royal family, music and entertainment moguls, including Jay-Z, and executives at companies such as Goldman Sachs and Twitter, the company will make a big step closer to that goal. Originally launched in 2013 as a booking platform to serve the niche market of wealthy jet setters, JetSmarter aggregates prices and availability from over 800 private flight providers across the country. Using the app, travelers can then select from over 3,000 airplanes that range from propeller planes to a Boeing business jet, and they can then book a flight to nearly any city that they choose. That's a traditional niche market, the charter customer who pays to create itineraries for themselves, says founder Sergey Petrosov. Pardon, Mr. Petrosov. The price barrier to create your own charter flight is still very high, and it's only an option for about 250,000 people within the United States. And that's why JetSmarter is offering a membership program to make private jet travel more affordable for frequent flyers. For an annual fee of $9,000 per year, members have access to the 35,000 hours of private flights that JetSmarter has pre-purchased at no extra cost. Members have two options: Jet Deals, which are spontaneous last-minute one-way flights, or Jet Shuttle, which offers shared, scheduled, and flights between major cities. Essentially, it works like an airline, except you go through a private carrier, says Petrosov. There's no going through security. You just pull up to a private plane 5 minutes before you go, and you take off. Now, there's going to be security concerns. Obviously, the TSA is going to be all upset about it and hot and bothered and whatever. But no, really, security concerns are actually kind of a prime thing when we're talking about something like this, because I don't want to bother with security concerns. I am a private individual. I have a right to travel. I have a right to purchase business from a private person if I want to. And if that person's business happens to be flight, then so be it. That's just how it is. And trying to stick government into that equation just puts a wrench in things, so to speak. So paying $800 a month to make unlimited trips across the country by private jet sounds kind of absurdly expensive. Currently, the majority of the jet shuttle flights range from 1.5 to 3 hours, but Petrosov says that the company is currently working on a better coast-to-coast product. Now, again, that's what the price is now. $800 a month sounds really expensive, but then again, you might end up paying $800 for one flight if you are really picky. So it's not that bad if you're going to be flying frequently or more than once a month. JetSmarter counts thousands of members and hundreds of thousands of non-member users who check the app on an average of 3.2 times per day. Petrosov says that all the investors in this round started as JetSmarter customers because he wanted brand ambassadors involved in the early stages of the company. He hints at a large institutional fundraise before the year's end, saying, "We want to make all air travel private," meaning that we're competing with airlines, not private jet companies, Petrosov says. This may be a 20 to 30-year vision, but with more efficient aircraft and proper sharing tools, we can reach that future. So $800 a month is actually not a bad price for a service such as this one. Now, it's interesting to see how this is directly contradicting the whole idea of flight as we think of it, generally speaking. We usually think of flight as a thing where you board a plane and you have all these people lining up and it's a hectic thing and it's hard to manage. But this would not be that. You would just get on the plane and you would fly, and that would be it. It's a private flight. So it's interesting to see how this is becoming actually more attainable for the average person. Pretty soon, the average person will be able to have a private flight with no problemo. I'm really interested to see how that's going to develop, because eventually we could all be flying private. And that seems to be the idea of this program, is that all of us will be flying private planes, or flying in private planes, I should say. And I would much prefer private flights over a public flight like on TWA or Malaysian Airlines or any of the other major airlines. I would much rather have a smaller experience than that, because I don't like crowds anyway. I don't think I would like the airline experience. So it just seems kind of I don't know. It just seems kind of not my thing. So if this were an option for me to fly on a private flight instead of flying on a major airline, then yeah, by all means, I would be all for that. So I'm very interested to see how this whole thing works out. AT&T is reportedly going to be causing some problems for its customers. It's going to be reportedly creating new activation fees and raising the existing ones. A report at Droid Life, according to Ars Technica, says that AT&T is planning to raise the activation fees for new phone contracts and upgrades, and also plans a brand new activation fee for certain no-contract customers. The new activation/upgrade fee for 1 and 2 year agreements, which is effective August the 1st, is raising from $40 to $45, which gives AT&T the highest activation fee in the industry. Verizon is still at $40 for now. There's also going to be a new $15 activation fee for AT&T Next, which has customers pay for their phones in monthly installments, Droid Life wrote, adding that this change will even apply to customers who bring their own devices. In related news, AT&T Next will no longer be a zero out-of-pocket installment plan, the report said. Come August the 1st, customers who are new to AT&T Next will have to pay a $15 activation fee when they pick up a new phone. This $15 fee also applies to those who bring their own device, or BYOD, and sign up for this new line of service. So for some odd reason, despite the fact that cell phones are becoming much easier to use and much more inexpensive to operate, for some reason prices are still going up, which doesn't really make any sense. You'd think that a smartphone would be an affordable thing for basically anybody, but for some reason, it's still not quite there. Most people that I know have a smartphone, right? Like most people that anyone knows has a smartphone. Chances are you have one, or your son has one, or your daughter has one, or your wife has one. Somebody you know has a smartphone, and there's not really any escape from them. In fact, there are more smartphones on this planet than there are people, which is kind of scary, actually. But that's just how it is. Smartphones are everywhere. Smartphones are rather affordable, but the plans, not so much. For some odd reason, the plans are still exorbitantly expensive in a lot of ways, and they're really not that user-friendly, and they're really just not that convenient either. So for now, we're kind of stuck with the big companies. You have T-Mobile, you have AT&T, you have Verizon, and that's pretty much it, actually. You don't have a whole lot, and Sprint, of course. You don't have a whole lot of choice. So it's kind of an annoying situation. Now you have subcontractors, like I use Ultra, and there's TracFone, and there's Straight Talk, and there's all sorts of different services. But still, you're going to end up paying kind of a lot of money out of pocket when it comes right down to it. I pay $20 a month for my service, and I see that as wildly expensive considering what all it does, which is not very much, actually. $20 a month for cell service seems kind of expensive to me. And it seems actually almost ridiculously expensive to me. Now, I know people who pay $9 a month for their services, but that's almost equivalent to freemiums, where you have a service for a low price or nothing at all, and it's really only there to get you to want the upgraded thing for a higher price. That seems like what we have with the cell services that we have today. It's really obnoxious, actually. It's an annoying situation. It's 12:46 here at Hot News Talk Radio. I'm Russell. Here's what's happening, and it's 8 a.m. 12:40 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. Looking at the weather here from the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Today, we're expecting thunderstorms. It's 85 degrees right now in the Chattanooga area. And Friday, 88 degrees and partly sunny. And Saturday, 88 degrees and mostly sunny. And Sunday, 88 degrees, mostly sunny as well. We're expecting thunderstorms today and tonight. So if you have your car parked out there, make sure you roll up your windows, because it just started raining here in the Chattanooga area. And again, it's 85 degrees here in the Chattanooga area with thunderstorms expected. And it just started raining here at the Hot News Talk Radio studios. That's your weather update from us here at the Weather Center at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Russell, this is Eric Judd. I wanted to let everybody know it looks like the Amnicola exit, if you are running northbound on 153, the Amnicola exit is being blocked. Not sure why, but there are some state trooper cars there and Chattanooga police cars. I'm not sure if it has something to do with the facility where the shooting happened last week.
Okay, great, Eric. Thanks for that. Give me more updates if you can.
Sure.
Thanks. Bye-bye. So it seems that Amnicola on 153, or just after 153, appears to be blocked off. We don't know why, but apparently state trooper cars and police cars are there. We don't know if that has anything to do with the investigation of the shooting which occurred on Thursday, but we'll keep you updated on that as well. We'll bring more updates on that right here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. And again, it's just started raining here at the Hot News Talk Radio studios, just a little bit of a smattering for now. But keep that in mind. If you're going to be traveling, road conditions are going to be quite wet. So that's your weather update from us here at the Weather Center, Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. Someone, I don't know who did it, but someone built a meth lab inside a federal research facility, and it kind of exploded, according to The Verge. Somebody built a methamphetamine lab inside a federal research facility, and a security guard was injured when it exploded. Chemical and Engineering News reports that the explosion took place July the 18th at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, also known as NIST, and the local police say that the evidence is at the scene is consistent with production of meth. Congress is now investigating how all this happened because they watched Breaking Bad and are not having it this close to the nation's capital. The suspected meth lab, which is located in Gaithersburg, Maryland, was built in NIST's Special Projects Building, which was sitting empty after scientists concluded their most recent experiment there. The fact that this explosion took place at a taxpayer-funded NIST facility, potentially endangering NIST employees, is of great concern, said Representative Lamar Smith, according to Chemical and Engineering News, which is where we get everything. The guard was treated for his injuries and released, according to the report. He then resigned from his job because he's too old for this, we assume. No arrests have been made in the case, and the meth maker is probably now setting up shop in the Library of Congress, according to The Verge. So somebody built a meth lab at the National Institute of Science and Technology? Yeah, National Institute of Standards and Technology, I should say. Somebody set up a meth lab there, and it exploded, and we don't know who did it. Well, I'm not sure what. There's so many different questions that need to be asked. Like a meth lab at the NIST, like who? Why? It's crazy. Well, I mean, we know why, to make meth, but I mean, who? Was it a federal employee? Was it just some guy? Was it some ne'er-do-well? Was it a chemistry teacher at your local middle school? We don't know. Just somebody built a meth lab and it exploded, injuring a security officer who promptly resigned. condolences to him and his family. He was not seriously injured, it appears, but he was rather injured. I mean, a meth lab explosion, we assume a propane tank blew up, and that's kind of a crazy event. A British man has received the world's first bionic eye implant for macular degeneration. A British man has become the first person in the world to receive a bionic eye implant that corrects for age-related macular degeneration, the most common cause of vision loss in adults. The implant was a success. Previously, the patient had no central vision whatsoever, and now he has low-resolution central vision. So the operation was carried out at Manchester Royal Eye Hospital, and the recipient of the implant was Ray Flynn, who's aged 80. So now there are implants for macular degeneration that could potentially be solving a lot of problems in the future with bionic implants. So as it is now, we generally think of implants as being kind of a cosmetic thing, right? Like we usually think of implants as being cosmetic. You get all sorts of different implants. And we think of surgery, plastic surgery, as being sort of a cosmetic thing with all sorts of different and very useful purposes for it. But now these technologies can be used actually to help people in their operations, in their mechanical operations every day. It's very exciting to see how this is going to be playing out. 4 men have reportedly been arrested in connection to JP Morgan Chase hack. So according to the New York Times and Bloomberg News, 4 men in Florida and Israel have been arrested in connection to the 2014 hack against JP Morgan Chase, which resulted in gigabytes of bank data being exfiltrated. The news outlet, citing anonymous sources, did not fully explain how all the suspects were connected. United States Attorney in Manhattan announced that the 2 Florida men were arrested on Tuesday and were formally charged with operating an unlicensed Bitcoin exchange. However, the criminal complaints make no mention of JP Morgan Chase. The 2 Israelis were named as Jerry, I think, Shalon, and Ziv Orenstein, and they were arrested by authorities there. A 5th man, Joshua Samuel Aaron, an American living in Israel for some reason, is reportedly still at large. The New York City-based federal prosecutor did not immediately respond to Ars Seneca's request for comment, and a search of federal court records did not reveal any criminal complaints against the Israelis. The Florida duo, Anthony Murgio and Yuri Lebedev, are formally accused of running Coin.mx and, quote, knowingly exchanged cash for people whom they believe may be engaged in criminal activity, end quote. According to federal prosecutors, among other violations, Coin.mx is accused of being a Bitcoin site used to acquire Bitcoins to pay for ransomware. The pair also apparently used a fraudulent organization called Collectible Club and somehow acquired beneficial control of an unnamed, very small New Jersey-based credit union and used it to process electronic bank payments. Prosecutors further described it as a captive bank. Federal prosecutors wrote in a newly unsealed criminal complaint that the fake group, Collectible Club, seems to be set up in a way to trick the major financial institutions through which they operated into believing that their unlawful Bitcoin exchange business was simply a members-only association of individuals who discussed, bought, and sold collectible items such as sports memorabilia. So very clever criminals, very, very clever criminals. Some of them were Israeli. We're not sure if they're going to be extradited here to the United States. For some reason, I see that as unlikely, but it's interesting to see anyway. I'm interested to see what's going to happen to these criminals and how they're going to be treated. Senator Al Franken, of all people, is urging a federal probe of Apple Music, of all things. Apple's hefty fees on in-app subscription services are being called into serious question. In a letter addressed to both the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice, Senator Al Franken called on federal regulators to look into possible Apple Music antitrust violations in the music streaming market. Heaven forbid you set your own prices. This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and here at the Chattanooga area, it's about 85 degrees with thunderstorms expected. We're seeing a bit of rain here at the Hot News Talk Radio studios as well. Nuganomics.com with David Toulis is coming up in just a few seconds right here. Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Get the TuneIn app and search for Hot News Talk Radio, where you can listen to it live on your smartphone. Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of the
Arnie